I don't
So
know why. I have a very stereotypical look in my head when I see, when someone mentions something about Africa, I tend to imagine some tribe, and I'm not sure this isn't the right view, of course. Factually, they're like regular people, right? But for some weird reason, when someone says Africa, the thing that comes in my head is like there's a jungle, and you have this tribe of people who are like
I,
barely clothed.
I think everyone has that for places that they've never been before, right? Where they have this mental map of what they've heard probably from others or from the media. And then like once they go, like when I think of Egypt, I just picture pyramids. And apparently it's like just a regular place. Like there's roads and all of that stuff. I just picture sand and pyramids, and that's it.
Man, have you seen the pyramids? You'd be shocked by how they look like, especially what you can see from the pyramids. You'd be shocked. Have you seen the pyramids?
I mean, I've seen like pictures of it. I've never been there.
Okay, so the pyramids are not in the middle of nowhere. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. So the pyramids are right next to the city, and you
Hmm.
can see the city and the pyramids. Like they're right next to each other.
See, I never knew that part.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I thought they were like somewhere in the middle of nowhere, but they're right there.
It kind of takes the mystique out of it. I thought it was gonna be cool. I thought like I had to take some sort of dune buggy to like some secret lair, go like through sand for 2 hours, and then finally see the pyramids. It's right next to the city,
It's literally right next to the city. It's just there.
man.
You have to take a camel, I think, to go there.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting, man. Some sort of camels. Man, it's crazy. When were the pyramids made? It's just insane that it was made so long ago with such beauty, such elegance.
Come on, man! It's just a pyramid. It's just a
Yeah,
guy. It's,
yeah,
it's this bunch
but
of
to
stones piled together.
but to construct that, I mean, think about it. Like, apparently, those stones are very heavy. There's a lot of these conspiracy theorists that say that aliens helped build the pyramids.
See, that's where people don't give our ancestors enough credit, right? They weren't idiots. They were really, really smart. They just didn't have technology. And
Hmm.
over a long period of time, they figured a lot of these things out. Let me show you more stuff, okay? Here, have a look at this. Do you see this stuff?
Hmm.
This is called an aqueduct, and it's used to transport water to, say, these old Roman cities and what have you. And after Rome fell, people just lost, they just forgot these things. They forgot how to build these things. And for the longest time, they used to think that these were made by giants. They had no idea how humans could have made these things. They need this to live because this is where the water is coming from. Like this actually has the water you need to, drink.
Drink.
So they just kept maintaining it, but they didn't know how to make it. And they had no clue how the people in the past could have made this. So they used to think that giants must have made these things. So that's the same thing. Like people in the past made this. They weren't idiots. It's just that we don't remember and it's lost how they built it. Just like to the people 1,000 years ago, they didn't know how humans could have built these structures.
Right.
Like,
It
have you
just
seen
makes you
Roman roads? They were really good.
Roman roads.
These were Roman roads.
Wow.
They were really, really good.
It's
Even
artistic.
Indian, yeah, and even Indian stuff was very good back then. Say, so this is an old civilization in India called Harappan civilization, and they had drainage systems and everything, and their city was very well planned.
Wow.
And the only reason this kind of like stopped happening here because the river they used to drink from, it vanished, so people had to leave.
Gotcha.
There was also the Indus Valley civilization, where India gets its name from.
Now those look amazing. What I'm looking at, it just makes you think, man. Like we were capable of doing so much. even in the past, where there's, I mean, there were just different processes, but they were able to figure it out.
Yeah, so this whole alien stuff that you were telling me, it's just something that people, they've forgotten that our ancestors were intelligent. They weren't morons.
Hmm.
When people think of people of the past, they think, okay, so it was some kind of primitive person, like a chimpanzee or something, not as smart as me, not as emotionally, adept as I am. But even if you go back 10,000 years, the humans that lived there were still modern humans. They were just as smart, they were just as intelligent, they had just the same emotions that you do. They just didn't have technology. But other than that, they were just as clever, just as capable, just as enterprising as you are, as people today are. And they could have built this pile of stones.
Hmm. Well, that's the powerful thing about studying history, because it just, you know how you just said, like, you have this perception of Africa. It's like, I believe that is that for a lot of people who don't study history, and myself included, I'm speaking from experience. It's just we have that default narrative. It's like, man, these guys in the past, they weren't that smart. What could they possibly teach me? Then you actually study history as an adult, and you're like, whoa, a lot of these problems that I'm going through now, someone 150 years ago went through the same exact problems. And it's from a different context, but it just proves that, yeah, I mean, they were very intelligent and they did feel emotions and such.
Yeah, so when I think of Africa, this is what I think of. And this is something I need to fix, right? Because Africa is not like this anymore. But like in my mind, when someone says Africa, I'm okay. So there's a black guy wearing his tribe robes, and there's like mud huts in the back.
Man, I heard from, I know a lot of individuals go to Africa now to actually just visit. You know, before, the cool place to go for your honeymoon and such was in Italy or just going on a Euro trip. But I do know people that are going to Africa nowadays, and they're like, dude, they're very, very modern now. I can't speak from experience because I've never been there, but apparently, it's much, much different. These groups that you're
The
showing me, the
fuck is
tribes,
this chick doing?
what the hell is that,
I
dude?
have no idea.
See, I'm squeamish. I don't know if is that something in their lip?
Yeah, it's something in their lip. Look,
Oh
their lip is
man, bro.
stretching. I've heard they used to do things like this to prevent slavers from kidnapping the women. Like, okay, this is gonna make them look ugly as hell, so let's do
Mm.
that. Then no one would want to kidnap them. But then it becomes an ego thing, and now I think the bigger the disc is, the prettier their tribe considers the girl to be.
What? That's
Yeah, I,
insane.
I don't get it. I don't get it. See, I don't get it. You see, the standards are so different, right? Like their hair, they don't have hair. But here, like in India, if you were bald, you would not be considered like a good-looking woman. But I like how fit they are.
Yeah, they all like have abs. This one I
Oh,
went to
that's a
the
chick.
village. Oh
Is
wait,
this a guy or a girl? I don't know.
I think that's a girl.
I think he has boobs. Yeah,
I can't tell.
she has boobs. I don't know. I can't tell either. I think that's a girl.
Yeah, so when you don't go to a place, like, there's these little perception maps that we have of the place. Like, as someone who's never been to the US, I wonder what their perception map is. They probably just think like McDonald's and hot dogs, maybe Trump.
See, that's a perception map of people who've never been in the city. Because when I talk to people in my village who've never been in a city, that's what they think of the city. They're like, "Oh, y'all just eat pizzas and burgers all day, and that's why you're all fat." No, that's not true. But okay.
It's just, I saw this hilarious meme that's like, here's what the world thinks of the US, and they literally just showed California, New York, Florida, and everything else, all the other states, they were just like other. Like,
There's also Texas, right?
yeah, how often do you hear of Idaho or Utah, Kansas?
See, I've heard of
It's just,
Utah, but apparently in the sense that they kind of marry their cousins, or like they have polygamy in Utah.
probably. I had a manager who got stationed in Utah for a while, and he was telling me about his experience there, where like he had a daughter, and they said that if the manager wanted to stay in the community, they needed to then he needed to marry off his daughter while she was 13. And this guy
What?
was like, yeah, so this guy was like this big Brooklyn dude. He's like, man, ain't no one touching my daughter. She's only 13. She's not gonna get married now. And then apparently, like a lot of these people in Utah were like, giving him a hard time. They were just like, hey, you're moving into our territory. You need to adjust to our cultures. And apparently in Utah, like it's very, very different from other parts of the city where everyone just knows each other. Right? You get married young. It's very old school, and
13 is too young, though.
it's too young. And um, eventually, the manager got out, but he was just telling me he had a very negative opinion of Utah after living there.
There's this one other place which has similar stuff like Alabama or something.
That's where Matt lives. We should ask him some questions about that.
Yeah, I've heard they marry their cousins and sisters and brothers and things like that.
Certain parts probably do. I heard there are certain parts that do.
I mean, I've not been to all the states in the US, so I can't confirm this, but
Even in terms of us in the US, like we have perception maps of our own people. Like if I go to New York and I'll tell my cousins like, "Oh yeah, Florida like it's fun." They're like, "Weird stuff happens in Florida." Because anytime we get like national coverage of something,
Florida man.
it's about like the zombie attack or like people taking bath salts and eating someone else's face. I'm like, no, 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 trust me, Florida isn't like that. They're like, there's only alligators in Florida, and it's like that's their perception map. Where
Well, that's Australia.
no, they think that in Florida too, because a lot of these videos will go viral, Harsh, where there's a crocodile that's just walking on a street. I'm like, trust me, guys, that doesn't happen all the time. And they'll be like, you can't pay me to come to Florida. Like they're so sold on the narrative that you can't even convince them otherwise at this point.
Have you seen Australia? Have you been to Australia?
I have cousins in Australia. I want to go, but I have that sort of mentality. I'm like, I hear you guys have snakes in the grocery
Everywhere.
store. Yeah.
Snakes and spiders.
And they're like, no, 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 we don't. I'm like, you can't pay me to go to Australia.
Are you familiar with the Aborigines, like the native population of Australia?
Mm-mm,
They're the only people to have not invented the bow and arrow.
really?
Yeah, so they're the only people who couldn't come up with a stupid bow and arrow. They were messing around with this stupid thing called a boomerang, which it hits the thing
Mm-hmm.
and then comes back, but it doesn't pierce the skin of the animal. So I don't get it. How can they miss something as simple as a bow and arrow? But they're the only tribe of people who didn't get it.
Did they at least get a sword or a dagger?
I don't know. I don't know. But so
I heard Australia, like the main thing I just know about Australia is that a lot of prisoners from England were sentenced to Australia. And that's why a lot of Australian accents are like England accents.
they're much harder to understand than the European accent, the UK accent.
Mm-hmm.
They're more like they are different. Yeah, but I am aware that this was used like as a prison where they would just take all these prisoners on a ship
Mm-hmm.
and put them in Australia.
Yeah.
It's an
There's
interesting country, though. It's an interesting country.
apparently a lot of Indians and Bengalis lived in Australia.
I've heard of that. That there's a lot of students there from Australia, from India, and
Apparently, a lot of Indians and Bengalis live in Singapore. Like, whenever I thought of Singapore, I did not think that's a place that would house a lot of Desi people. But I had this client who's like straight up Indian. And I was like, so what's it like there? Like, do you have to learn a new language? He's like, yeah, you can learn the new language, but there's a lot of Indians here. That's how I met my wife. I was like, for real? Harsh, me and you are taking over, man. We're taking all over the world.
with the virus.